anytime there is a question, I find it's personally very helpful to go back to source and exactly look at what Ra said. And you might hear me paraphrase or expand upon things. This is just my way in order to help you learn what is true for you. Remember, you are your own authority. So I'm always going to ask you to please source back into what is it like for you. I'm not the one here telling you what to do or how it is for you. Because remember, when we look at the human design system, one of the tenets of the truth and the core is that truth is individual. So when we look at the mechanics of conditioning, just because someone says it is so, doesn't mean it's so across the board. However, when we go deep into the mechanics of how Ra taught, we see some core aspects of mechanical truths that you can absolutely source into and experiment with for yourself first, and then do your best to explain it to maybe a fellow student, and then practice and play with friends and family, whoever it is that comes your way that is open to your experimentation on them. And then you work with clients. So it's a process of first personal, your own process, and then who is that's in your life that you can either observe or talk to. So your friends, your family, your trusted confidants, your fellow students. These are the people that you want to practice with first before you hang out your shingle and attempt to do this kind of work. Remember, this is advanced so that we really get to the foundation of what's inspirational for me when it comes to how this works is what's it like for you? What's it like for you? Your path that is true. So when we look at the undefined shadow of the head center's inspirational functioning, we're looking at making mental decisions from the questions, from the pressure, by thinking about things that do not matter to you. Now, that is a very huge generic. We know that the strategy of the not self of the open head center and the way that open head center affects the mind makes decisions as far as its own internal questions, that the way the open head center does that is it turns the mind toward thinking about things that simply do not matter. And when he says things that simply do not matter, he's not really saying that everything that the mind is processing is going to be things that do not matter, but there is no discernment. So no discernment, meaning weighing this versus that. It's all just pressure. And the other thing is that the many things that the open head center can process may turn out to be of genuine value to others. So two sides of the coin. Head center can be processing pressure that actually doesn't matter. And yet, to you, it may be a source of inspiration for others. Why? Well, mechanically, I am me, you are you. We come together in our specificity, and in our discourse, we find what is true. So if I amplify you, your abstraction or your logical process, or I connect with you relative to your rationalizations, and here I am with my mysterious inner truth pressure, we come together in awareness and we can commune through our difference and through our specific differentiated perspective, finding what is true in communion. That is the true awakening and awareness of a nine-centered human being. When it comes to outer authority, this is what is incredibly inspirational. And so, what we're really talking about is that the open head center is trying to move the way mind makes decisions by thinking about things that do not matter to you. And of course, that leads the mind to decide to do this or that based on something that does not have to do with the integrity of you as a being, your differentiation. Because there is no differentiation in total openness. It's wisdom, it's learning potential. So in other words, that means then that it is going to be conditioned, those questions. So the undefined head, shadows and questions, making mental decisions, thinking about things that do not matter to you, that's a real deep generalization. And in your courses that you take with me, I would prefer that you speak to the specificity of a human being, and you will recognize why by the time we end this particular series or sessions. Because when we're looking at talking in that language about the way in which the head center operates, that not self strategy, thinking about things that don't matter to you. If somebody says to you, can you do something? And you say, no, I'm thinking about something that doesn't matter. That's a real deep generalization. No, I'm too busy. I'm running around trying to figure things out. I've got this question and I'm trying to figure out why, or the doubts, or the confusion, whatever it happens to be, because you can see that there are 3 gates that come out of the head center. Pressure, pressure, mental pressure in the form of questions. And you see that the 63rd and the 64th gate, those 2 gates that are not activated in this example are going to be not yours physically, mentally, spiritually. They're not yours authentically from the natal design. Okay, natal design. Now, mechanically, what you see happening is that if we were looking at this as your chart, when you have a gate pointing to that open space on the other side, the 64 being receptive, your mind interprets it as your confusion, 64, gate of confusion. Whereas if you have openness on the other side, your mind actually takes it in as a transpersonal process, blaming the other. This is the other person's doubt or the outside world's doubt. This is collective after all. So it's going to be about non-specificity in relationship to you. It's not you, it's not true. Now that's, again, generality relative to you and your life process. What if we're now looking at layering on the Chiron return cycle over your natal body graph? And now we have activations coming in. Well, that's good conditioning, absolutely necessary to fulfill your life's work. Is it truly yours now? No, it's still transit. It's still part of the process of development of wisdom, because wherever you are open, there is a potentiality for wisdom as an outer authority. Openness, outer authority, wisdom potential. Okay, so you think of this as I, and you think of this as other. When I say this, I'm pointing to openness and receptivity that feels incredibly personal, because the harmonic gate on the other side is pointed at that 64. So you think with the I, the ego I, the mind, the I, that thinks, therefore it thinks it is. And it's not true. It is a collection of distortions and conditionings that you think of as you. And so over here, when there's a channel, a whole channel that is open in your own design, the other person, you take in their doubts, their answers, and then you're running around based on their inspiration, which is not true to you, not true, and not you. So what do? Follow strategy and authority, not just by paying lip service, but by experimentation and seeing how it works. Thanks, Ra. Anything that is open is subject to conditioning in your chart. The gates of a center represent the nuances of the way in which the actual mental conditioning is operating. So let me rephrase that in a little bit to make it more specific, as in gates that you have a planetary aspect, a life aspect within an undefined center. That's an aspect of your differentiation. It is not self, it is true to you, but it's you in relational context to others or life, because that is how this particular center, in this case, the head center, will turn on, light up all the time when it gets conditioned is with that gate specificity. So in this example, let's say you've got an open 63rd gate and you're thinking about doubts that do not matter. In other words, it becomes something that you can target as a specific because it's open, it's receptive, there's no planet there. It is not specific to you. It is conditioning that isn't true or authentic or real or honest or in integrity with the sovereign nature of what you came here to be. And this, I'm being very specific, and I'm going to repeat myself as much as possible to the point where you'll probably get bored of me saying it over and over and over again, because this is the thing I see so many people getting wrong, according to Ra. Thinking about things that don't matter, thinking about those confusing things, or those doubtful things that actually truly do not matter to you, that are a waste of your time and energy, which equates to money, and nobody likes to waste money, hey, especially in today's day and age. So when we're talking about even the head center with its limitation of only 3 gates, we're talking about the influence of conditioning that is leading us to think about things that don't matter. And we have to see it offers a lot more conditioning than just that. It's thinking about the doubts that don't matter. It's thinking about all those confusing things that don't matter. So at this level of the knowledge, you're an analyst. By the end of the semester, Ra says you're an analyst. Okay, I'm going to treat you as a colleague as soon as you finish PTL 1 semester 3, because you are an analyst, even though you might not have your stamp of approval from the International Human Design School as far as certified. You are still, according to Ra, according to me, you are an analyst, and you can do this work. It's not LYD though. So thinking about things that don't matter doesn't cut it in my book. What is it specifically that this human being is thinking about that doesn't matter? Again, it doesn't matter those confusions. It doesn't matter those doubts. What truly matters in this person's design, that dormant gate activation that turns on, that lights up, that gets triggered with why. It's the big why in the sky, 61, the mysteries of life, the pressure to question, the pressure to find rationalizations of this inner truth. This is this person's Jupiter. That means that it's a personal rule. It's a law. It's a protection mechanism for their own mental pressure. What is truly inspiring? What's natural for this person to attune to plan for, to naturally question? This is their differentiation. Even though it is not defined, because technically, definition requires a full channel. It requires planets on either side of the gates, okay? This is not defined. It's in an undefined center. Therefore, we call it dormant. It is a gate activation that is dormant in the natal design, okay? It is part of the nature of that being. It is what is part of their differentiated imprint. Differentiated. Ra says, as a matter of fact, the only thing it's not thinking about that doesn't matter is what is there in the 61, because the 61st gate is active. It's a dormant activation. Dormant question. It's a very specific shadow strategy that comes alive when the person is being conditioned through transits, through people, through the crystallized principle of this body carrying memory deep within the cells. So you spend your first 7 years attached to mama or papa, or conditioned by grandpa or grandma. You are going to get the conditioning imprint crystallized in the cells because you spend your most formative years in their aura, in their presence. And then what? It sets up the patterning for you to doubt everything going into the future if you take on their conditioning. It sets up the pattern for you to be confused if you take on their conditioning. And neither of those things truly matter to you. What's truly of worth and of value to you, to ponder, to question, is the why in the sky. 61. Okay? So, in other words, what you have is a head center that is creating in its openness a not-self strategy, a shadow, adaptive, conditioned strategy, but a not-self strategy that is quite specific in that sense, very specific. What this means then is that as analysts, we have the capability to go beyond the generic and to truly express the wonderment and beauty, the awe and magnificence of what it is to be a nine-centered human being. Why? Because self-realization, self-reflective consciousness, that is what we are here for. Differentiated, unique perspectives. And the beginning exercise here is that from now on, when you are looking at a chart and you're looking at the not self, I want you to look at the way in which the not self operates to go beyond that generic. A not self gate is open. There is no planetary activation nor fixing. That's the not self gate. Instead of thinking about confusing things that don't matter, that's the not self gate. Instead of thinking about doubts going into the future that don't matter, that's the not self gate that is transpersonal, meaning between you and the other. Here with the 61, it's thinking about things that do matter. Why? That's your personal rule with this person's chart. So when we look at this thinking about things that are confusing, we know that it's about the past, it's experiential, it's relational because of what we know about 64, where it is in the mandala wheel. It's in the quarter of duality, purpose fulfilled through bonding. One of the rare places where there's a gate plus a gate, harmonic in the channel, but right next to each other in the wheel. So you know then that this is a very heavy relational pressure to make sense of what happened. So what would be different? What can be true? In other words, to begin to look at it, in terms of what makes, for example, the head center as far as different, if somebody had a 63 gate activation as well. Oh, that's quite different because now we have a true self-pondering as far as the doubts going into the future, depending on where it comes from, the personality or the design. So in other words, here would be a head center that would be very focused on thinking about confusing things that don't matter and not also thinking about those doubtful things because they have that. And what happens when you have that? You take it for granted. You can't see yourself clearly. You overlook it because you're pondering, you as in the conscious witness personality construct that is built upon the contamination of the openness. In other words, there are nuances to the way in which this works depending on your differentiated design or whatever your clients is, your friends, families, familiars, whatever analysis work you are doing with whatever chart. So when you look in the center at the 61, which is the conditioning receptor, okay? Hanging 61, we had law and protection, your personal rule consciously because it was black. This conditioning receptor, because it's receptive to conditioning on the other side, as well as the two channels, two gates that are there, potentially filtering the consciousness data stream of the transits or the people. That conditioning receptor of the 61 is always the fixed gate. Ra would also call it a fixed gate in an open or an undefined center. Here, where you're looking at this fixedness, again, this does not play into the not self mind. I repeat, the fixedness, the hanging gate does not play into the not self mind, but it plays into the way in which the mind is going to feed the ajna, the way the pressure is going to be captured by the ajna because it's being delivered by something inside of you, your genetic potential that is true, activated, fixed, turned on. Now, it is, of course, going to be conditioned by a 24 coming in, whether it be transits or people. Remember, transits, manifestors, reflectors, going to take that in a much deeper way than projectors and generators who take in conditioning more from people, not so much transits. You're a projector, you're with somebody, that person is going to be your sole focus, not transits, person. Okay, every type is going to take this in differently. And you're going to be conditioned by the 24. It's going to be delivered in a very specific way, and it doesn't always work. Oh boy, when you've got this as an experience and as an awareness, you know it for truth. It doesn't always work. Now we're going to move to a little bit more of a complexity, because there's a lot more working parts and pieces here. With the head center, it's quite easy. That's why we start off there. Why? Only 3 gates, only 3 channels. Here, holy, there's a lot stuff going on there. So let's go and break it down one by one. In the survival recognition of the splenic center, the shadow or the not self tendency of an undefined splenic center in its survival recognition is that it amplifies fears, and what that will lead it to do is holding on to things that are not good for you. Rigidly, strategically, logically. And yet, because it's undefined here, we know that this way is not clear. It is not that person's authority. And so let's take a look at holding on to things that are not good for you. We learned that in LYD. Tell us something new, Lavina, or your clients. I already took that. I know that. Tell me something new. Okay. The shadow of the undefined survival instincts as it's functioning. And remember, whether it's defined or undefined, all of it can function in a healthy or an unhealthy way. Then this actually, to remember, it's not just about surface as in what you see as a genetic imprinting when we go beyond the generic. When we're dealing with somebody that comes into the world and has an open splenic system, hi, that's me, the moment they emerge, in the moment that they emerge, they are already deeply insecure. This is quite something to grasp. This holding on, because we are going to be dealing with this strategy, holding on to what is not good for you, that is holding on to what is neither correct nor beneficial to you. We are talking about people, places, things, jobs, habits, whatever the case may be, because of your fear manifestation, false evidence appearing real, because of your insecurity or whatever false narrative your mind is believing, the lie, the I of the false ego I inside your mind. You rationalize or self-realize potentially this truth inside that is inherently, individually graspable by the awareness principle of being your own authority. You can. It just takes a while to get there, my friends. I feel for you. I know it's true. I've seen it over and over again, where people come into my practice and they are still believing the lie of the false ego I, the openness that lies inside. And they completely don't pay attention to the specificity of the real, honest, true activations of what they came here for. And it's an unfortunate, my mind is saying cause and effect. What to do? It is what it is. This holding on has nothing to do with what the byproduct is of the holding on. I'm going to read that again. This holding on to the thing that is not good for you has nothing to do with the byproduct of what the byproduct is of the holding on. It is only focused on the value, the direct value, amplifying the splenic system so that there's this false sense of security. Pause. When you look at the transit coming in, you've got an undefined splenic center. That transit coming in, defining you temporarily, conditioning you is a better word, because definition is, in truth, channels from birth. That's it. So it's conditioning you temporarily to have the illusion of defined spleen. And you go, I don't need that fucking job. I'm out of here. I don't need him. I don't need her. I could care less about. And then third line, break the bond, walk away. Oh, shit. Transit goes, and you lost your job, lover, relationship. Oops. Whenever you look at beings with open splenic systems, what they are holding on to is always somebody's spleen in relational dynamic. So you'll find that it is the most common thing you come across when you see undefined splenic center in somebody's design. Usually, it's very uncommon to see that the two in relational dynamic don't have a defined spleen. Either there's an undefined clinging on to a defined spleen, or there's two undefined that come together and create the temporary illusion of being safe and healthy, more secure together because they're clinging on, holding on to each other for dear life, and maybe that relationship isn't healthy. And yet, in this illusion delusion, we think that they might be when it's not. Because why? The conditioning runs so deep. We are conditioned from birth to think that we lack or are missing and broken wherever it is that there is openness. And what is not correct or beneficial for them is what comes as a byproduct of that defined spleen, the rest of the vehicle that is connected to the spleen in the other. Let's put it into an example. You got an undefined spleen. Hi, that's me. You got a man, woman, doesn't matter, but I'm attracted to men. So in my life, I have done some wild, crazy things next to a man that was not particularly, and spontaneously, that was not particularly healthy for me. Risky, like skydiving, like free diving, without any regulators, going down to 100 feet, just breathing off of somebody else's second. Watching dolphins and sharks, absolutely free floating, 100 feet down below. I could have died, but I felt safe. There's a defined spleen. He'll take care of me. Oh, no worries, Oh, jumping off of an airplane, out of an airplane. You want to go? Sure, let's do it. Yeah, holy shit, what the fuck am I doing? It happens. It's a person, generally speaking, that you're attracted to, that maybe pressures you, undefined, wide split emotional, into doing things that are not right for you, like unprotected sex. I mean, anything that you could do that maybe not be right for you, and yet you feel safe because you're with this person, and they may not be correct for you. Quote, Ross says, the other thing is there. That's a weird sentence. The other thing that is there is a great dilemma that happens to beings who have an open spleen when there is a transit that defines their splenic center. And this is specifically transit. What happens in that moment is the false sense of security. Here you get this perversity of the strategy rather than holding on to what is not good for you. Rather than that, neither correct nor beneficial. Here you let go of what might be or is good for you, correct or beneficial. Like my example of, don't need that fucking job anymore. Oops. Don't have a job, can't pay my bills. Oops. It happens. And what to do? It is what it is. We've got a lot of people with open splenic centers, about half the population. Ross says, I think the most extraordinary thing about the open spleen is the way in which the strategy turns itself on its back the moment there is activation from a transit. And it is these transiting activations that are so interesting in relationship to the spleen because they operate differently than the definition that is coming from a person. That activation that is coming from the program, that moment that the spleen is active, you've got people that if there is one person in their life, the one that's telling them they're with the wrong person or who's really bad for them and they're holding on for nothing, the one person that is telling them the right thing, that's the person they get rid of, letting go of what is good for you. But it's all about being unable to let go of the security of the definition, meaning especially You got to define splenic lover, friend, brother, whoever, parent. Those are the things that we cling to as an undefined splenic center. Is it true for you? What is the difference here between the gate 48, 44, and gate 50? Well, let's take a look-see. 48, 44, and 50. We see that 48 has no harmonic pointing at it. That's different because the 44 actually has a planetary activation. So it's personal. This, being open, is a transpersonal potential for connection with others in order to experience the conditioning, because there's nothing personal here. However, on the unconscious, we see the 27 pointed at the 50. So we have something personal. That's the difference. But the 50 has no planetary activation. So again, just like we looked at with the head center, we have something that is theirs, something that is not, that the ego I thinks of as mine, and something that is completely open. And so this is where the mind lays blame on others, particularly when they have the whole channel. That is the nature of the truth of mechanics, the mechanics of conditioning. 48 being an open gate in an open center that leads to another open gate. That means there's no activation in the 16. That means there's blame inherent in the mental game. The 57th gate is an open gate in an open center, but it has the harmonic possibility in the gate 10. So the gate 10 becomes a personal process that the 57 identifies with the I in the individual wanting to know or being empowered to be intuitive clarity. And then 44 is actually a dormant potential, a conditioning receptor, receptive to conditioning. Now, is it receptive to conditioning only from the 26? No. Why? Because there are all these possibilities for any of the channels to come in, any of the gate activations to come in, and that leads to the conditioning of the center, which leads to the turning on or lighting up of the awareness of the 44 coming to meet. Yeah, this instinct for what is going to be successful moving into the future. Because it fears the past, it wants success moving into the future. 48, listen close. These are the correct languages to use. 48 is a mental conditioner of the survival instincts, the intuition, the pattern recognition, most specifically of the splenic center, with a transpersonal harmonic influencer. Harmonic is simply the gate activation on the other side. The harmonic influences the 48 because it's transpersonal, it comes through the other. 57 is a mental conditioner of the survival instincts. In this part, it's intuition, specifically, with a personal harmonic influencer, the 10. Personal, it's theirs. Harmonic, other side of the channel, to them. What they think of as themselves, the I. I have to be more intuitive. I'm a professional intuitive. I make money intuitively. I am an intuitive human design analyst, they say. Really? Interesting. Nice. Thanks for sharing. Goodbye. 44 is a conditioning receptor, meaning it is receptive to conditioning. It is their activation. 3 different gates, and each one of them are different in the way in which they're going to operate and impact the not self, the shadow aspect, the mind inside that lies, the mind that distorts and contorts, that manipulates you to believe what indeed is not true, not you. You have to see this. I want you to see this and grasp this. I want you to know this, because you have no idea until you go plumb the depths of the deeper realms of your psychological makeup and nature You have no idea that you're thinking things that do not matter or that should be disregarded because you identify with your mind inside of your head as I. And you believe that lie. And I have seen it hurt people over and over and over again. And no wonder Ross stopped giving readings. Because no matter how much you hammer at them, hey, this voice inside of you, it's not true, it's not you, they still suffer because they believe the ego I. They can't disconnect from that mind's lie. When it comes to the differentiation of your analysis work, you have to begin with you, because this is not about the surface. Remember, you have so much more differentiation in store. Remember your colors, your motivation, your tonal cognition. How does it actually work? What are the variations? Because there are going to be tons of variations. What's the difference between that 48th gate and the 44th gate and the 50th gate? There are real differences there based upon the specificity of that person's nature and what is getting activated. 48th gate, again, open gate in an open center that leads to an open gate. With no activation in the 16, that means the development of talent on the wavelength has to do with educational, transformational, potentially, conditioning. Conditioning is not bad, not good. It is what it is. It is the adaptive condition strategies that you use to make decisions that leads to the action that crystallizes the conditioning inside. Let me say that again in a different way. When you take action from mental shadow or not self strategy, what happens is you're crystallizing in your form conditioning or action that is not true to you and is going to lead you down the path of frustration, anger, bitterness, and disappointment. It is what it is. It is the action taken, not the mental belief system or the thought processes. It is the action taken that crystallize the conditioning inside. And this is where you can come from a place and space of authenticity if you would but just listen to the body, this vehicle, and its precious life, purpose, fulfillment. Back to our example, the 57th gate being an open gate in an open center, it has a harmonic possibility truly in the 10th gate. The 20, the 34, not you, not true, not in alignment with your form or mental composite of the differentiation process. It's not, it's conditioning, good, bad, right, wrong. It is what it is, right, wrong. It is what it is. The 44th gate is an active gate in an open center pointed at its potential harmonic, not personal, as far as having an activation, planetary activation, life process there. There is no activation in that particular design in the 26. This means openness to the heart business. This means the 44 personally is going to take that 26 mentally as a problem, just like the mind inside identifies with everything that it is not. The 57, I'm so intuitive. The 26, I have to be the best in order to prove my value and worth. So here you have an open center, the splenic center. You have 3 different gates, and each and every one of them are going to operate differently in the way in which they're going to operate as far as the impact on the not self, differently. Specifically, please see that. Please know that. Experiment, try it and see. Keynote your vulnerability. These are your vulnerabilities, the openness, not the hanging gates. They do not contribute to your not self purpose.